All right, and we are live on American Hammers Network. Um, a new season is upon us, folks, and that means a new season of fixture focus shows. Given that the first match week is upon us, we're going to start it off with the first ever fixture focus show for the 2020-2021 season. A bit of a late start, obviously, due to this little pandemic we have here, but nonetheless, we begin. And as we all know, West Ham hosts Newcastle at the London Stadium now at 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern, which means it's 8 p.m. British Standard Time, I believe. Given that the TV providers over there are trying to make as many games available to watch for people, obviously, because there are going to be no fans for quite some time. But nonetheless, I want to introduce Andy from Gallowgate Shots.
Hello,
Um,
everyone.
yeah, Andy, thanks for joining us. First episode of the new season, so a little special there to kick us off. Yeah,
Yeah,
welcome to the
pleasure.
show. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Thanks
thanks
for
for having me
joining
on.
us.
I just said to you before we came on there, it's despite our fortunes in the last season, you can't beat the start of a new season. So I'm actually excited to talk about football for the first time in what feels like a very, very long time. So I'm really, really grateful to be on. Thanks.
Yeah, there's some meaningful games upon us, and we'll definitely get to the two teams that are obviously playing on Saturday night. But first, I actually wanted to start off by touching base a little bit about your experience with Gallowgate Shots. I didn't really hear of you guys before the last couple of weeks when I was researching some potential guests to come on this episode. So could you just maybe give a little brief origin story of Gallowgate Shots, and then describe maybe your involvement, and then what types of content
Yeah.
Gallagher Shots produces overall.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was basically started not by me, but by a Newcastle fan called Chris, who set up basically a Twitter account, and it was just a Twitter account that he used just to make jokes, memes, post videos, just general rubbish, really. And then he got a few mates involved, and it kind of just naturally developed to being a bit of a sort of ad hoc podcast, and then they took the leap to being a sort of YouTube channel with regular videos, regular podcasts. I didn't know any of the guys before they took it on. I used to write articles for them when they did a physical fanzine, back when people used to actually read physical things. And then they asked me, yeah, and they asked me to sort of just come on to do very similar videos to what you do. So the videos I do for the channel are me speaking to opposition fans, getting their take on it, because I think it's quite easy, especially in the YouTube community, to be in a bit of an echo chamber where you just hear the same opinions over and over again. So it's always nice to get a fresh take from someone else. So we do my stuff. We have a regular weekly podcast, and we pride ourselves on being sort of very laid back. We don't take ourselves seriously at all, but we haven't gone as far as the kind of Arsenal fan TV. So we're not kind of we don't embarrass ourselves, but at the same time we don't really care if we do embarrass ourselves, if you know what I mean. We're switched on with football. We're by no means XG and XA experts or anything like that. We just like football, similar to yourselves, I presume, and we just like talking football. And it's up to a couple of thousand subscribers now. Podcast does really well, so we're hoping this can be another year where we can kick on and grow. Fingers
Yeah.
crossed.
Yeah, and the Twitter account. I mean, I know you said it started as a Twitter account, but it's a pretty big one. I
Yeah.
think a little over 25,000 followers, so a pretty massive channel there.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely gonna check you guys out more and more as the season goes on. Now that I've familiarized myself with you.
Same
Um,
here.
yeah. Like I said a little bit before we started recording, American Hammers has been going on for about a year and a half. Started by Tim and Lee out in Boston, and the thing that I love about this channel is that Tim and Lee have been just so open and including sort of West Ham fans from all over the world, whether
Mhm.
it be in London and the rest of England, Dubai and Asia, Europe, wherever. So I think it's been a very inclusive channel, and it's been nice to get to know a lot of West Ham fans across the world. Um, but I know you said that you guys love talking football, and so let's talk about. And I use the term soccer a lot. It's just
That's okay. I've
my
got American
stuff.
family. I understand.
Okay, all right. So if I drop that soccer word in there, that's just me being me. But let's talk a little bit about the transfer business that you guys have had.
Mm.
You guys have been pretty busy as of late in the last week, it seems. All the major signings have been made almost. Callum Wilson, obviously, from Bournemouth. Ryan Fraser from Bournemouth as well, even though he didn't play in the restart because he didn't extend his contract. And then Jamal Lewis, the nice young left back from Norwich City. It seems like, and I'm obviously an outside perspective because I'm not a Newcastle fan, but it seems like from Newcastle Twitter that I've read a little bit, a lot of fans are just astonished that you guys have actually made some signings for positions that you actually needed help with. For example, up top, I think your leading scorer was John Joe Shelby, and I think he had 6 goals, and he's not a striker. And the £40 million striker you got last summer, Joelinton, I think he had 2 or 3. 2. So obviously a need there filled by Callum Wilson, who has been pretty consistent over the last 4 or 5 years. Ryan Fraser, again, I think you guys, I looked up some stats. I forgot the exact place, but you guys were, I think, 14th or 15th in the league last year in big chances created. And Ryan Fraser didn't have a great year last year, but the year prior had 14 assists. So obviously he has the capability to create chances for you guys. It just seems like the signings that you guys have made have been competent, signings that have been well informed by proper recruitment and proper scouting. So I just wanted to get your take on your summer/fall business so far.
Yeah, you're right in what you're saying, that obviously under Mike Ashley, recruitment has always been the worst part of the whole thing, because we've very much had a policy of buying young players for cheap from France or the Netherlands, play them for a couple of seasons, then sell them for big money. So, Wijnaldum's an example of that. Johan Kabai's an example of that. And then even through our youth academy, Andy Carroll, who finally comes good, and then we sell him for big money, and his money was still never reinvested. So, and this was something that's known across the football spectrum. In the Tottenham Hotspur documentary, Daniel Levy even alludes to it when he's talking to Danny Rose, saying, Newcastle will loan you, but they won't buy you, despite the fact that we haven't had a competent left back for 3 or 4 seasons, because Paul Dummett isn't a left back. So there's always a frustration. On deadline day, they have all the reporters stood out there in the rain, and every time they go to a Newcastle one, he's always saying, no action here, don't worry about it, they're not going to buy anyone. So for us to actually have identified gaps in our squad, like left back, striker, creative midfielder, and to fill those with quote unquote proven players, goes a long way, because obviously we were happy with the signing of Almiron. At the time, we were happy with the signing of Joe Linton because we thought, bloody hell, £40 million, fair enough, he's put his hand in his pocket there. But it turns out that was probably the worst bit of transfer business we've ever done. So it's, leading up to the season, I don't think I've ever been less interested going into a football season. But, it's amazing what these fresh faces can do. Jamal Lewis, don't know a lot about him, but he was always seemed like one of the better players in Norwich's team, and you can't knock a player who's, an international already at his age for Northern Ireland. Callum Wilson, he's streaky, but 8 goals was apparently a poor season for him last year, and that's 2 more than our top scorer got. So you can't really knock it. Fraser, my only question mark on him is that he did essentially just bail on Bournemouth when they really needed him. He basically just said, screw you guys, I'm not going to play for you anymore, I'll let you get relegated and I'll move on. But, if he hadn't done that, we wouldn't have signed him. So, and then the 2 sort of bonus ones, we signed Jeff Hendrick on a free, who was released by Burnley. And from what I gather, he's a competent midfielder, another good body in the squad. And then a replacement keeper as well in Gillespie. And just after we signed him, Dubravka twisted his ankle. So that ended up being a really good signing as well. So, really happy with recruitment.
Is Dubravka not going to play this upcoming weekend?
No, unfortunately not. And he was the most number of saves for any goalkeeper last season. That's partially because of how great he is, but also partially because we just let teams attack us and score all the time. So it'll probably be Carl Darlow in goal, or this new signing Gillespie. I'm not really certain, but it'll be one of those 2, but not Dubravka, which is the most important thing from your guys' point of view. So we're probably getting into analysis a bit early, but my advice to West Ham is just shoot as much as possible, because we don't really have good replacement goalkeepers, and we don't really know what this new one's like. So, but on the whole, really happy with recruitment, which is something we've not been able to say for a long time.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, we all, as West Ham fans, we all know too well the impact that a lost goalkeeper can have, especially like Dubravka has been very talented for you guys and has been a good a good keeper. We obviously had Fabianski, and his first season for us was incredible. Hammer of the Year winner, if I'm not mistaken, 2 seasons ago. So, and then he got injured early last season. That's when we really sort of nosedived in the table. Now, given all the signings, though, that you've been speaking of, you still did mention something. You did say that you just haven't been as you haven't been as little interested. I said that weird, but you haven't had that much interest heading into this season compared to other seasons. I'm just wondering, from a Newcastle fan's perspective, these seemingly competent signings that you guys have made, has it sort of lessened the negative angst that fans have towards Mike Ashley, or is that negativity and that negative sort of persona still very much alive amongst the supporters?
Yeah, don't get me wrong. We haven't forgiven him for the last 15 years of completely just gutting the club of all of its heart. It's definitely softened the blow slightly. I mean, the reason we were so pessimistic about this season was a culmination of lots of things, really. There was obviously going quite a while back now, losing Rafael Benitez, who was the man who could have really taken us forward to the next level. Recruiting really poorly, again, losing good players. And then it's just the fatigue every year of never improving and always just going for mediocrity. Mm-hmm. And then the sort of straw that broke the camel's back this year was obviously the failed takeover, where we were all of a sudden odds-on favourite to sign Mbappe because of stupid Newcastle fans betting on it. But we went from being a club that could have potentially been the World League to all of a sudden being back to let's scrape the barrel to try and sign free signings from Burnley. So it was really difficult season to get excited for, really, because we just thought it's going to be the same again. I was more excited to watch like the big boys going at it this year, seeing how much Man United and Chelsea and Man City and Liverpool are going to fight at it, and I wasn't kind of bothered about it. Sounds awful, but it was so hard to get excited for this season.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I love Newcastle. I'll be going to every game once the stadium's open again. I've got a season ticket. I'll be there cheering the lads on. But I mean, you must know as a West Ham fan as well, the fatigue does get to you where you don't think you're really going anywhere. So it's been nice to get competent signings in to go, do you know what, we can actually have some exciting games and potentially, not be scraping around for 17th place this year. So I don't think we're going to do any more than lower half of mid-table, if that even makes sense. But, I'm not as concerned about sort of going down as I was last year, where I was adamant we were going to get relegated with Steve Bruce.
Yeah, and I think we're sort of the reverse now, where going into last season there was a lot of hope, and this season there really isn't any. And we'll definitely talk about that.
That's really sad.
Yeah, and the fatigue factor about just constantly just every season's the same, and you're just struggling to survive. And I've only been supporting the team for this will be my 7th season now, so I can only imagine what someone like you has gone through, who've supported the team their entire life. We do have a question in the comments from Thomas. Thomas says, are there any other holes in the first team that Andy would like to see filled besides the ones that were seemingly filled from the signings that we talked about?
Yeah, I mean, left back and striker were obviously the main ones. I'm a bit confused about what Bruce is going to do next, because I've always thought centre back was a position that we were pretty comfortable in, but Bruce seems to be really not happy at all. So I wouldn't mind seeing 1 or 2 more bodies in defence, because post lockdown, after Bruce sort of switched up to going 4 at the back, we were awful defensively, just giving away stupid goals all the time. I wouldn't mind 1 more quality creative midfielder, because a lot of last season it was basically rely on St. Maximin or Shelvey, and that was the entire tactic. So it would be nice to have some more cover, so we're not relying on 1 or 2 players in the midfield. And I think, maybe a defender better than what we've got, because we seem to have lots of 7 out of 10 defenders, but I think we need another one on that next level to kind of keep us more solid, because I think attacking wise, I actually think we're going to be all right this year with what we've got, provided no one gets injured. But it would be nice to have a bit of cover there, and then, have that reliable defender that can win us a game, because I think last year we seemed to, season before we had Lascelles, Cher, Lejeune, Kieran Clark, Fernandez, who are all doing fantastic, and then this year they seem to have, last year they seemed to go off the boil slightly. So yeah, That's a very long-winded way of answering the question. I think probably another centre back, a right back, and a creative midfielder. And to be honest, as well, I know it sounds a bit stupid, but Callum Wilson is our only fit striker now, other than Andy Carroll, and we all know his knees are made of glass. So
we do know that.
So, but we've never had an in-depth squad, really. It's always just been the first 11's okay, and then we're really struggling after that. So I think the first 11 wise, I think we're probably okay. It's just, as the season goes on and people start picking up knocks and going away on international breaks and things, I think we just need a few more bodies in those positions.
Understood. We briefly touched upon this earlier, but I want to go into it a little bit more in depth. The takeover, or the takeover that never ended up coming to fruition. I did a little research on it, and so for those who are watching this video or will watch this video and don't understand, from my understanding, it's this: Amanda Staveley sort of led the consortium, if you want to call it, to purchase Newcastle from Mike Ashley, which is the second time she's tried to buy it from him in the last few seasons. I think her, the Rubin family, and then really it was heavily financed by Saudis. I think 70 or 80%. But essentially, it seems like this time around, it wasn't really Mike Ashley playing hardball, but the Premier League sort of middling about and not really making a decision until the very end when they said, no, our owners. I don't know the exact process that it took, but maybe we can dive into exactly what happened, because it seems like the Premier League was more at fault for this not happening than Mike Ashley.
Well, yeah, they were. There was a contract between, so like you say, it was a consortium. So Amanda Staveley is basically a broker for very wealthy people in the Middle East. So she brokered the deal for the Man City takeover, and she was heavily involved in lots of bank bailouts during the 2008 crash. So she's very well connected. She was also Prince Andrew's girlfriend at one point, but that's another story.
Interesting. Okay.
I don't know how old she was at the time, but anyway, that's a dark hole to go into. She basically brokered a consortium together, which was her company, PCP Capital Partners, which is a very wealthy company in its own right. The Rubin brothers, who ridiculously wealthy people in their own right, and then the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, which is, for all intents and purposes, the Saudi state. They try to make an argument that they weren't just the Saudi state, they were a separate investment body, but all of the investment money comes from the coffers of the royal family, so it's hard to really argue with that. But what happened this time was they paid the money that Ashley wanted, give or take. There was a share purchase agreement in place, and it was exchanged, so it became legally binding. Mike Ashley legally agreed to sell the club to these people, conditional on it being approved by the Premier League. So the Premier League have an owners and directors test, which most of the time, 99% of the time, is just a rubber stamp. It's never really questioned, and it's essentially a question of, are these owners going to put this club into administration? And there were rules brought in after things like, Leeds and other clubs like that who went down, and they basically had shyster owners who bought them for bad reasons. And we've seen that in, with Bury and the lower leagues, and Wigan now as well, with that dodgy betting thing that's gone on allegedly. Yeah. So what happened was it was approved, sent to the Premier League for them to rubber stamp it, and then a process that is reportedly only supposed to take 4 weeks went on for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, and we hadn't heard anything. So obviously all the Twitter lawyers, me being one of them, got our heads together and tried to work out what they actually were hanging around for. And we didn't really think they had any legal basis to reject it based on their test, because their test basically just says, have they committed a crime in their country? And in their country, no, they haven't committed any crimes according to their law. And are they financially suitable? Are they going to run the club into the ground? Well, no, they have infinite money because they've got oil reserves that they just print money for them. So we weren't really sure why it was rejected, and after there was sort of no basis for it, so eventually Amanda Staveley pulled the plug on it and said these people are never going to approve it because they don't want us to buy the club. And there was lots of conspiracy theories that the Premier League had been leaned on by Liverpool, Spurs, some of the other big clubs. And also there is and this does have a bit of evidence behind it. I know Newcastle fans went a bit mental on Twitter replying to the Premier League, but BN Sports, who is basically the number one rights TV broadcaster for the Premier League, are owned by Qatar.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about the politics in that region, Qatar and the Saudis aren't really best friends, to say the least. So there was an alleged, again, undue influence by BN Sports, basically saying football is ours. The Saudis don't get involved in football. That's our little monopoly. So the other sort of theory was that they were basically lining the Premier League's pockets and saying, don't let this go through. So there's obviously no real evidence for that, but the official line from the Premier League was that you can't have a country owning a football club, and they've said that the Public Investment Fund could not adequately legally distinguish themselves from the country, which for me is a bit of a cop-out, because you look at PSG and Man City, they're clearly owned by Qatar. Then I think they've just found an excuse not to approve it. But the latest, as of about 3 hours ago, is Mike Ashley has actually released a statement, which I think is the first time he's ever done this in his entire ownership of Newcastle, calling out Richard Masters of the Premier League to say, you have applied this test wrong. I want to sell the club, and I'm going to be using all my legal teams to sort it out. So we thought it was dead in the water. I'd kind of got over it and accepted the fact we were going to be signing Jeff Hendrick and not Kylian Mbappe. But it looks like Ashley wants to fight for it. So we did lots of social media campaigns, pressuring MPs. I think we got like 60 or 70 members of parliament to write to the Premier League, government ministers, things like that. And you'll have seen any tweet that the Premier League put out for about a month was just filled with mental Newcastle fans, such as myself, calling out the Premier League because we wanted answers. So we got an answer from them eventually, and the Premier League kindly met with supporters trusts to discuss it, obviously under the remit of we can't really discuss it very much because it's confidential. Right. So not quite dead in the water. I mean, I don't think it's going to go anywhere because, you know, the Premier League is a very powerful organisation. They can basically do what they want. They hold all the cards. So at this point, we'll wait and see. But definitely not 100% dead. It's like a quote from The Godfather 3, isn't it? Where it's like, just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. Yeah, it's been like that with this all the way through, because I mean, contracts were apparently exchanged in sort of April, something like that, and we're still here on the 9th of September talking about it. So who knows? It would be an amazing thing for the club, for the region. I mean, the Reuben brothers own loads of properties in Newcastle. They want to invest in the region. I won't go into the whole human rights issues because that's another conversation in itself. That was something we were just willing to see how it went. We just wanted Mike Ashley out of the club, and if we were really uncomfortable with these owners coming in, we could do something about it later. But yeah, we're all gutted about it, and that's kind of the basic story as to what happened. So it's over, but technically it's not. So we'll wait and see.
Interesting. Yeah, I did not see that statement from a few hours ago. So
yeah, just maybe not even 3 hours ago, maybe only an hour before we came on, they released a statement. So yeah.
So why do you think he wants to sell the club so bad? He just doesn't want to deal with it anymore and doesn't want to deal with the fans anymore?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, we talked about fatigue. He could be fatigued with it himself. He's investing in lots of other things now. I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but when we first got relegated, that first full season we had under Ashley, he tried to sell us then. And we had a few buyers wanting to buy it, but like what happened recently in the past few years, he's tried to sell us. He's just priced us too high. And the only people who were ever going to be stupid enough to buy Newcastle were going to be people with more money than sense. And we had those people, and now they're not here. So yeah, he's wanted to sell it for a couple of years, allegedly. He's wanted the right price. He wants no sort of conditions on it. He says, give me my £350 million and I'll go off into the sunset and buy a few more failing shops. Which is what he does as his business model. So yeah, I think he might just be a bit sick of it. I know that if he does sell Newcastle, he'll definitely keep his finger in a few pies because he makes too much money from the sort of distribution of the replica shirts and everything like that. So he'll never be fully gone. But as long as he's not actually running the football club, we'll all be happy.
Gotcha. So let's move into the actual football of this conversation, the football part of this conversation. I want to talk about Steve Bruce. Obviously, I don't know if he come to this. I don't know if so is he from Newcastle or is he from near Newcastle? He's definitely he grew up in Newcastle.
I think he might be from Ashington. I don't actually know. He is a Geordie, so he's from Newcastle and the surrounding area. I think he might be from Ashington, which is where Jackie Charlton and those sort of famous Man United footballers were from. So he is a local lad, despite the fact he jumped at the opportunity to manage Sunderland, the first opportunity he got. Yeah, we don't really mind. He does divide opinion, Bruce. I suspect that's what your question is going to be. What do we think of him?
My question was going to be, I mean, it is going to be like, what do you think of him? Because I do think, and correct me if I'm wrong, again, I'm not a Newcastle fan, so I don't follow them all that much, but from my perspective, it did seem that he did slightly exceed expectations last season. I think Newcastle were one of the favorites to go down, especially when Bruce was appointed after not re-signing Rafa to a new deal. So I do think that he slightly exceeded expectations. So I guess my question is more along the lines of, do Newcastle fans or you personally think that that Bruce can sort of, after 1 year under his belt, build off of that momentum and sort of push on a little further, or is there still some hesitation overall about Bruce's talent as a manager?
Yeah, well, to get into the Newcastle fans' heads for Steve Bruce, you've got to look at the context of when he was appointed. We obviously went from Benitez, who basically every single fan loved him. We played quite boring football under Rafa, but we knew we had a world-class manager there who could take us to the next level with a little bit of investment, even just the most minute level of investment. And obviously we were pushing for him to get reappointed, and then we basically reverted back to type in getting another Steve McLaren, another John Carver, another Alan Pardew, and we can both speak about Alan Pardew for probably at length. But it was just the fact it was such a deflating experience when he was appointed, because we just knew he was a sort of run-of-the-mill 6 out of 10 Premier League / Championship manager. So he had to do a lot to win us over. And he certainly won over some fans. I don't think we'll ever be fully convinced by him, because we know he's not that level that any football fan would want for a manager. He's just not that exciting. He very much divides opinion in the fan base now. There are some people who will just not praise him for anything he's done, and others who are willing to kind of similar. I'm quite a reasonable fan, so I can hold my hands up and say he's not the best in the world, but you know what? He has exceeded expectations. He's got results when we didn't expect them. I thought we were going to go down. He found a way to win games, and at the end of the day, that's what Rafa did. And I wouldn't put them in the same category, but Bruce has done his job, and fair play to him. He's managed to say something to Ashley to get him to make these signings that he would never have normally made. So I'm willing to keep giving him the benefit of the doubt. As we keep moving forward, he's done okay, and that's all you could really ask of him in the circumstances.
So for those who are watching this and aren't really familiar with how Steve Bruce's team sets up and plays, how would you describe the typical setup, the typical style of play that Steve Bruce managed team shows?
Yeah, so when he first took over, he essentially tried to just emulate the Rafa formula, which was big at the back, essentially just pack everyone in the box, make it as difficult as possible to beat you. But he had a bit of a shift after we lost a few games and went back to what I think is his preferred formation now, which is essentially a 4-2-3-1, which is the most basic formation people play nowadays. He sometimes goes back to a bit of a 5 at the back when he's worried. So when we played Man City in the Cup, he'll just pack everyone into the box and park the bus. But it will basically be, I reckon this season, it will be a flat back 4 with Shelvey and Hayden in the midfield, and then that very exciting looking front 4 we've got, which will now be Almiron, Fraser, St. Maximin and Wilson. And last year it was Almiron, St. Maximin, Joe Linton or Gale or Carroll, and just nowhere near as exciting as it probably is now. So that's how he's going to set up. Pretty sort of just bog standard team setup from us, really. But it's that front 4 that we're relying on. So
yeah.
One, I think we're bottom of basically every single stat for attackers last season. Lowest on possession, lowest for goals, lowest for XG, and all these sort of snazzy stats people like to use these days. We were abysmal, and we definitely needed those creative players. So I think because Bruce relies on flair players and pace on the break when we're not going to keep the ball, I do think we will be much better going forward with people like Shelvey pinging balls in behind for pacey players like Fraser, Almiron, St. Maximin. And hopefully we now have a competent striker who can actually put the ball in the goal, which is what you want from a striker. So, yeah, it'll be pretty predictable.
So we do have a couple questions in the comments for you that have to do with some of the players. So Thomas asks, does Andy think that you guys will end up losing Hayden? And then Irish Tommy asks if you know if the club intends to make any more signings, or do you think that their business is done for now? So we'll start off with the Hayden question. I know he's been linked to a couple of clubs over the past 2 or 3 transfer windows and hasn't quite left. West Ham, actually, he was linked with them last summer slightly. He wasn't ever serious. But do you think that you'll end up losing him, or do you think that you'll actually keep him through this transfer window?
No, I think he'll stay. The last couple of seasons, the reason he's been linked away is because he basically, I think this is right, but he's got family problems. So I think his daughter's unwell, and he's from the Midlands or down south somewhere that isn't Newcastle, and he was basically wanting to get back to being around his family. So it wasn't a footballing reason at all. He just said, look, I want to be around my family because this is really difficult. I'm having to move family around all the time and it's not easy. So I think he did actually put in a transfer request, but he seems to have settled now. I think it was Benitez who convinced him just to stick around for a bit longer. But there seems to be no talk of him going now unless someone comes in at the last minute. I think the only player we would really lose would be Richie, because Bournemouth wanted him in the Callum Wilson deal, but it looks like he's staying now as well.
Okay, so any more signings you think you're going to make, or do you think that that's probably all you're going to see for next month?
Yeah, I think we're done. I think we're probably done for the next 4 years. No one might actually, but I don't think we're going to sign anyone else. We were linked with potentially some loan signings. I know everyone's sniffing around Ryan Brewster at Liverpool. We were one of the clubs apparently wanting to get him on loan. We were linked with a left back from Greece somewhere, but I think we're done. There might be 1 or 2 things happening, but I think we're probably done. I think Bruce is happy with the squad now.
Gotcha. I know you touched upon this a little bit earlier in the conversation, but when you look at the transfer signings that you guys have made, the sort of wobbly end to the season after the project restart when you guys were pretty safe and set in the Premier League, what are your expectations when you look at this next campaign? I think you mentioned mid-table. Is that really sort of the ceiling for this club this season?
Yeah, I think with the greatest respect to West Ham, I think we'll probably have quite similar seasons. We'll have great moments, got some exciting players, but I can't see Newcastle doing any more than mid-table at the very least. What we tend to do is start relatively well, be absolutely terrible for 6 months, and right at the end of the season manage to come 10th or 11th. Which is all we ever did under Benitez as well. So I can see us just sort of floating around Brighton and Leeds and people like that who'll be there. But I don't think we'll go down this year. I think the standard of the teams who have come up aren't great. I think Leeds will be okay, but I can't see us going down. I think we'll probably maybe same position as last time, 13th, 14th, whatever it was. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Which isn't very exciting, is it?
No,
that's all you can really ask for.
It's not. Although as sad as this is to say, I do envy your position, because it seems like you are a bit more confident that you're going to be staying up compared to us fans. And let's actually talk about the match. So Newcastle, you guys have actually been pretty successful against us overall in this fixture. You guys have not lost in 3 meetings against us, which includes two wins. We did draw in the restart. So yeah, you guys beat us 3-2 at the London Stadium back in October, I believe, maybe November, and then we drew 2-2. It was a frustrating draw for us, to say the least. We thought we deserved to win that at St. James's. But over the previous 17 matches, you guys have actually won 9. Over 50%. We've only won 5 and 3 draws there. So Newcastle has gotten the better of West Ham in recent years. So given everything that we've talked about, given the state of the clubs, we always end this with a nice little score prediction to see if one of us is right after the match. So yeah, what are you predicting on Saturday?
Well, I'm minded to let you go first because we do predictions on our channel and they're always wrong. So, I mean, first game of the season is really hard to. I think both teams will be rusty and tired.
Yeah.
So I can't see it being. I mean, it's the last game on the TV, so it's probably going to be the worst one. I do fancy us to win though. I don't know if it's because the signings have just happened, so I'm still excited. I think it might be just a really bad 1-0 win.
Gotcha.
Unless Suchek manages to get out of quarantine early, and then he'll smash a header in. Because I saw that I had him in my fantasy team, and then realised he got coronavirus.
Yeah. Well, he was. I think he was exposed to someone with corona. I'm not sure if he actually. Right. He may have tested positive. If he did, I didn't read that, but yeah, you know what? I'm going with a draw here, 1-1. I do think it'll be ugly. I do think Callum Wilson will score. He tends to score against West Ham quite a bit. Yeah, I think 7 in his last 8 against us, or 8 in his last 7. But I do think that we'll nick it. I do think that both teams will be rusty. I do think you guys will have some confidence with the new signings, but I do believe that we will nick a point. It'll be very important for us to do so. And I don't have the fixtures right in front of me, but I believe our next 6 or 7 after you guys are just tough. So it'll be a massive game, not only because of that, but because obviously we want to get off on the right foot and start off the season strong. But we'll see. Hopefully you're wrong, and hopefully we're both wrong, and West Ham can get all 3. But we'll see. I
just want a good game, first game of the season. To be honest, I feel like even though football ended not that long ago, it just feels like it's been forever.
Yeah, I know. It's only been a month and a half, but time these days sort of stands still. So month and a half seems like 6 months.
I think the fact that it's quite hard to call, it says a lot about our two teams. I think we are going to be quite similar this season. I don't think there's going to be much to differentiate us. I think so. It sounds like Moyes isn't getting on with the board very well, so he's probably going to be under pressure immediately, despite the fact that he's not really being given that much time again. So I think you guys do need to get off to a good start, because again, just from fantasy football reasons, I've seen your fixture run and it's really ugly. So you could even the first game of the season, you could really do with beating us, but equally, I'd like us to get off to a good start as well. So we'll wait and see.
We shall see. But Andy, really appreciate you coming on the show. It's greatly appreciated. I love meeting new supporters of teams from all over the world, and I'm really excited to come on your show here in a little bit. And just really happy to have you join us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're probably just going to talk about the same things again in about 10 minutes, but fine. No, thanks for having me. It's been great.
Of course. Take care, man.